This series on women in science, technology, and business is brought to you by Zoho Corporation. Zoho is the operating system for business.
Hello, I'm Kamla. My guest today is Dr. Cynthia Lee. She teaches computer science at Stanford University, and she's also the co-founder of a very interesting organization called Peer Instruction to Computer Science. We'll be talking to her about computer science and what she thought she would become when she grew up. Welcome, Cynthia.
I'm glad to be here.
So what did you think you would become when you were all old and 25 years old?
I had a lot of different ideas about what I would be when I grew up. Most of them had to do with some kind of benefit to society. So I thought maybe I'll be a social worker or a teacher or some kind of just be in the Peace Corps for the rest of my life. I think
Very idealistic.
Yeah.
Okay. So science never figured?
It didn't. I was very interested in science in terms of the natural world. I love and still love going outdoors. That's where I replenish myself and my patience and my sanity. But I didn't think of it as a career.
Why? Because you loved math as a kid. Your dad is a mathematician. So why did you not think that way?
I think maybe it just had to do with I didn't have an idea of myself as having a career for its own sake of any kind. That there would be a lot of things I'd want to accomplish in the world, but that they would be very much on the side from home and family. And so maybe I just thought of being a scientist as something that would take away too much from that.
You wanted a family life?
Yeah.
Okay. So math and science didn't figure. So how did they resurface in your life?
They resurfaced in my life towards the end of high school. So I had some experience in elementary school programming and loved it then, but went deep down into hibernation until the very end of high school. And I basically just needed money. And I had been working for the high school newspaper and the high school magazine. And I really liked doing the layout design on the computer. And so I thought, well, a way I could get money would be to do web pages. And some of my friends' dads had a small business or what have you that needed a web page. And so I would make money setting up the web page and getting just into the HTML a little bit, and then also getting into working on the server where the code goes. And step by step, I got more into the computer science side of it. And as soon as I started programming on Unix, it was, I was kind of
hooked.
Hooked, yeah.
Hooked on Unix. So did you do an internship at Ames, NASA?
I did. So at NASA was where I first really got onto the Unix servers, and the internship was to do their web pages, since that's what I felt that I was good at. But I think they were great mentors, and that they were happy to meet me where my current interests were, but give little nudges in the direction that they thought, where I could go. And so they were encouraging me to get deeper and deeper into the systems side. And it didn't take very much encouragement. It was just a few days I realized I'm completely hooked on this. So.
Okay, so you rediscovered your love. And that's a common story for a lot of young people, whether they're girls or boys, but it looks like it's a little bit more common with girls. That is, somehow they fall off the wagon or they lose interest in math and science when they're middle school. It happened to you too. But you were able to jump back on the wagon. Why do you think it happens with students when they lose an interest in math and science? Is it the teachers that we need to look for, saying that the teachers need to help them, or what is the way out?
Well, you're right. The statistics show it's actually almost amusing to me or tragic how closely my life matched the statistics, which are that girls and boys are equally interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. as children. And then around middle school, the numbers for girls just fall right off a cliff. And the reasons for it, I don't know that they're that well understood in as far as the research goes. There are a lot of contributing factors that we know. And one is a sense that when people are thinking about the career that they want, we know that it's often thought of as much as joining a tribe, a group of people, as it is joining a topic. So young people especially, or anyone who's reevaluating their career direction, will be looking at the kind of people who are currently in an area and evaluating, are those the kind of people that I want to spend 8 hours of my day with? Is that community that is currently engaged in this activity a community whose values and culture I share? And when girls and underrepresented minority students look at a lot of the science, especially computer science community, they don't see representatives of themselves. And not only do they not see faces that look like them, but a lot of times there's even deeper that they're not seeing the community that has values that are aligned with their values. And that can be a real problem, even for students who absolutely have the aptitude and would have the interest in the topic otherwise.
So there's no clear-cut answer on why this happens. But I looked at a study, I forget what study it was, where they said that for girls, teachers play a key role. Do you find that because you're teaching at Stanford and you're teaching the introductory courses? Do you find your students that are female a little different from the male, or what do you find?
Every student has challenges and needs carrying mentors who are invested in them. So in that sense, there's no difference in what I see in terms of the neediness of students who come to my office hours or in the help that I provide them. But I do hope that seeing me at the front of the room early on in the student's career is something that gives our female students a reason to believe this is something that I could be interested in. But as I talked before about values as well, I try to talk about that in class, talk about the need for technology to be used in ways that benefit society, for us to be very conscious about the effects of some of the things that we're disrupting in Silicon Valley. And I hope that also speaks to students, regardless of race or gender or whatever, students who feel an affinity for those kind of concerns. And they'll get other perspectives from other faculty members as well. But I hope that the environment that I create is one that will reach out to a broad range of students.
You've been teaching for how long?
This is just finished my 4th year at Stanford, and then I taught off and on and part-time for several years at UC San Diego before that.
So you've had quite a few years of experience. And in all these years, have you seen an increase in the number of girls that are coming into computer science as a major?
Yeah, absolutely. And the numbers are trending up. The overall number of students is trending up very sharply nationwide. And that's also very much the case at Stanford and at UC San Diego. And while those numbers are trending up, of course, even if the percentage of women was staying the same, there would be more women. Which actually helps. There's a certain critical mass factor, but we're also seeing the percentage of women increasing at Stanford and nationwide. So I think there was a lot of press around in 2015 about 30%. We crossed the 30% female students declaring the major at Stanford, and that's a trending up number.
Do you see? Is it common to see women as computer science teachers? Or is that uncommon?
It's uncommon.
Why is that?
So, Well, with a lot of things, as the numbers are trending up, it takes time for that change to filter up to the highest levels. So around the time when I was an undergraduate, the percent of women undergraduates was much lower than it was now. And so you would expect people at, in my kind of contemporary level in my career would be, a smaller number than we have with students now. I think it's, there are a bunch of other reasons too. We know it's not just a pure pipeline issue. We know that the pipeline is leaky at every single stage. So we start with fewer than 50% women coming out of high school. And then whatever percentage we have in undergrad, it's a smaller percentage of women going to grad school. Not just that not everyone who goes and finishes a bachelor's degree goes on to graduate school, but the percentage of women is smaller. And from there, women who will get a PhD is smaller. And from students who are getting a PhD, those who go on to faculty positions as opposed to other things is smaller. So
that means you're a subset of a subset of a subset of.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many derivations that you're probably, I don't know, 1% of the population of girls that go on to pursue a degree in computer science?
I don't know how the numbers work out eventually, but sometimes.
Listen, I'm poor in math. I'm looking at you. But it's a very small percent. But yours is a very interesting story because your dad was a mathematician, or is a mathematician. He can't be. He is a mathematician.
Yeah.
So did he help you with your math homework when you were young?
He did a little bit. I was one of those students who did most everything on their own. I think, some parents know when all the due dates are coming up, and I don't think my parents ever, it wasn't that they were neglectful
no, you were
in
self-sufficient.
any way, but they just weren't very hands-on in that particular thing, which I think was good for me in the long run. But one thing that he did do was provide extra little activities. So when I was very small, something he would do to pass the time, if we were in church or somewhere where I had to be quiet, is he would give me graph paper and then a list of XY coordinates. So just, 3, 5, and then just a whole bunch of those. And I would plot each one, and then, they would make a smiley face or some kind of shape or picture. And that's...
So it was connect the dots, but in a very interesting way. Oh, wow.
Just little things like that.
So what is the role of a father? Have you ever thought about it, the role of a father in helping a girl, shape their interest in math and science?
I have thought about that a lot. And so I'm one of 4 girls. I had no brothers and I had 3 sisters. And I often wonder if, my parents are very egalitarian minded, but I do sometimes wonder if they'd had a son, if maybe there wouldn't have been quite as much, if my dad wanted anyone to carry on his legacy, it was going to have to be one of his daughters. So, so I think maybe I benefited from that.
And what your other 3 siblings didn't pursue a science stream?
One of them actually got a graduate degree in math. She has a master's in math and works in math education. And another is an artist, and another is a lawyer.
Okay, so logic. So that is something that you're very fond of. So you were good in math, but again, like you mentioned, you fell off the wagon when you were in middle school, and then you rediscovered your interest in math. What kept you going? Because when you rediscover your interest in math, you still have to have your fundamentals have to be strong to be able to follow high school level math. So what kept you motivated to do your math homework? It's not like you're a bad student, it's just that you probably didn't have a good teacher. I don't know why you lost interest.
I mean, I can tell you very clearly why I lost interest in math specifically, not science and other STEM things necessarily, but math specifically in elementary school, was that I thought I was quite bad at it. And that was because it was in that phase where the math that you're working on is memorizing math facts, the addition and subtraction and the multiplication tables, and getting timed tests on those.
Like the Kumon test that they have.
Yeah, where you've got 40 multiplication problems and you got to solve them all in 2 minutes or something like that. And at least relative to my classmates and the chart of stickers that was on the wall in our classroom, I was one of the worst students at that. I just wasn't fast. And I think that at the time, I understood being good in math to mean you had to be fast in math. And I didn't think about it as something where it required creativity or logic and problem solving. And those were things that I was interested in. I was really interested in mystery novels or detective novels, the Encyclopedia Brown, Nancy Drew, anything Agatha Christie.
Whodunit?
Yeah, well, whodunit, and the idea that you could have someone who has this really sharp brain that's able to puzzle things out that the average person couldn't. Maybe that appealed to my vanity in some way, I don't know. But I didn't think that any of those kinds of skills had anything to do with math. And of course, I was very wrong about that, and I realized that later on, once I got to the level of math where that comes more into play. And I'm just glad that I had enough duty and diligence as a student generally to keep going until we got to that point.
So then when you were ready to go to college, you knew you were going to do computer science?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what you did and got a PhD. What was your PhD on?
My PhD was in high-performance computing, so looking at large, what we call parallel systems, where you want a computer that's so big that you are forced to make it by taking hundreds or thousands of smaller computers and tying them together with a network, and then thinking about the problems that you want to solve as something that can be deployed across that entire system simultaneously to treat it as one cohesive system.
I can think of the Cray supercomputer.
Yeah.
Was that in parallel computing?
So the original Cray that is the C shape and it has the bench around the edge, that one was not parallel. That was kind of an early peak of kind of the best that could be done before you just said, we just can't push in this direction any further. We need to go parallel. Okay. So, and that was a little bit before my time in getting into that area of specialization. So I was working on some of the early parallel computers.
So why did you take up teaching? Because with the PhD in parallel computing, you could work for a startup and make loads of money, and then, get into a company that goes IPO, right?
Well,
that's what everybody wants, right?
I did try that. Actually, in college, I was part of a startup with some classmates. But the reason that I went into teaching had to do with wanting to stay true to the ideals of career that I had in mind when I was younger. So, we talked about teacher, social worker, things like that. And in fact, so when I fell completely infatuated with computers at NASA and realized this Unix stuff is really fun and this programming stuff is really
Do you know what version
fun.
of Unix, what flavor of Unix you were using?
Oh, we were using AIX and Solaris, or the two. Anyway, so when I felt that kind of infatuation and was just head over heels, I had a real crisis of conscience as well, that that really was keeping me up at night, and where I was just feeling awful about the desire that I had to go and pursue a career in this. I thought it would be very selfish to choose something because it was fun and because it would pay really well, and abandon this mission of doing better in the world. So, and I didn't know how to reconcile those, and I just didn't feel good about making the selfish choice. So it was actually a few years that I was wrestling in this middle ground and trying to figure out how to circle that square before I realized that my knowledge of computer science actually could make me a more powerful contributor to the world. Because a lot of people are willing to put in hours, painting fences or doing volunteer work that is not highly specialized. But the value that I could add with a specialized skill could be much greater. And the first time that I really had the aha moment about that was as an undergrad, when I saw that we have the TAs and undergraduate students and graduate students helping other students to learn computer science. And I immediately was drawn to that kind of work. And I love nothing more than figuring something out and then turning around right away and helping someone else to do it.
So you're a true engineer, because engineers love to solve problems. So you wanted to solve the great problem within the community of being able to help and contribute. What has been teaching like for you?
I mean, what I love about it is that it's something new every day, and you said it perfectly that it's an engineering problem. When I have someone in my office who's stuck on something, it's actually an interesting puzzle to solve, to figure out where exactly did they get stuck? What exactly is the misconception about what we're supposed to be doing that's holding them back? And often the person who's stuck is not able to articulate exactly their thinking. I mean, that's the whole problem, is that it's a little bit muddled. So
why does that happen?
I mean, that's just human nature, is when you're in something new, you don't have very nicely structured ways of thinking about it. In fact, that's what distinguishes novices from experts, is having a good structure and categories and a good way of organizing the information.
And navigating.
Yeah, navigational tools in the space. So being able to talk to someone and figure out exactly where they are and what, it's, you imagine if someone called you on your cell phone and they're lost, and you say, okay, well, where are you? Well, I don't know. Well, what do you see? Do you see a big tree? Or, so you first have to figure out where they are, and then figure out, all in real time, very quickly, what is the piece that you can add that's going to fill that hole? Or what's the question that you could ask that will help them cross that bridge? And I love that design problem. I love that engineering problem.
So you also end up learning in the process.
Yeah.
Because here's the student who's trying to explain something, and then in untangling and trying to understand what it is that they're dealing with, you also end up learning. I wonder if teachers go into an automatic mode.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding of quality teaching to think that if we could just figure out the one best way to explain this and then show that explanation to everyone, then that would be the best that we could do as far as education or teaching. And the key insight that I've had in my experience is that there's no such thing as the one best way of explaining something, because it has to start from where the students are, and it has to connect with what they currently understand and their context. And so it's really a problem of trying to figure out how to do that and how to reach that. Now, when you're speaking to a large group, you're going to have to pick something that's going to be kind of best for everyone, but that has to have follow-up with these more individual interactions.
We have 2 minutes left, and there's something that you brought here. This one is called a clicker.
Mm-hmm.
What is this clicker?
This is a device that just has these 5 buttons that are labeled A through E, and it's something that I use to try to have this individual customization that I think is so critical in a class that has a large number of students. So I'll put up a question. Sometimes it's after I've explained a topic. I'll put up a question just to gauge how many students are getting this. Sometimes I'll actually ask the question before I introduce the topic to help students realize, oh, there's something here that I don't quite yet have the tools to grapple with. Learning is so much about first wanting to learn the thing. And sometimes you have to make a little space on your your bookshelf of your mind to realize there's a gap there, and now I really want to finish it or to fill it. So helping students with the right question to realize that they now are motivated to learn because there's a question they can't answer, and none of us likes to have a question that we can't answer.
So instead of raising your hands, you actually get a far more nuanced feedback using the clicker. My final question, if there is a student out there who is good in math and yet is kind of ambivalent whether they may have same issues that you had, that you thought you weren't good at math because you couldn't do those timed questions, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be, first of all, don't give up, and don't be too quick to label yourself. There's so much time in your life to figure out what you're good at, and the best thing to do is to keep going where you are and leave as many doors open to yourself as possible. And realize that skill in something, more than anything else, is just a function of how much time you put into it. So if someone else seems to be a little more ahead than you are, think, well, they probably had a little more time put into this than I did up to this point. But to see that as a possibility rather than a deficit. If I put in that time, I'll be there too.
Cynthia, that's very good advice. The time is, you have to put in the time to be good at something. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. If you missed any of our shows, you can catch them on our YouTube channel. We'll be back again next week with another edition of our show. Until then, goodbye.
This series on women in science, technology, and business is brought to you by Zoho Corporation. Zoho is the operating system for business.